Okay, we can now start.
Hello. Good afternoon to everybody.
Hello. Good afternoon to all the participants.
Ranjit, welcome back to resume the.
Let us resume it, and in the post-class session, we will start with Dr. Kailash Chandra Moharana's paper on the facets of Indian culture with reference to Professor Ratnakar Pati. And we know Professor Ratnakar Pati is one of our own. He's our own man. We should say that he's from Odisha, and what type of and almost when he was philosophizing, Radhakrishnan and others, K.C. Bhattacharya, Radhakrishnan and others, who were the upholders of the idealistic tradition in India, was propounding the different facets of Indian culture. So we'll listen from Dr. Moharana on Ratnakar Pati's view on the facets of Indian culture. Dr. Moharana, you start, please.
Good afternoon to everybody. Respected Chairman of the session, Professor Ranjit Ghosh, my teacher and guide, Professor Ghosh, other executive members of ORISSA Philosophy Association, dear participants, and the other viewers. I may be excused for not joining in the morning session as I was suffering from fever, headache, and vomiting. So I could not join in time. Now, before commencing my paper, let me give a little background of writing this paper. When I joined Utpal University in MA class, I found my teachers, Professor K.P. Mishra, Professor J.P. Das, and others were discussing on Orissαν philosophers, and they were also writing many papers on Orissαν philosophers. And in my MPhil class, my teacher, Professor J.P. Das, inspired me to work on Orissαν philosophers. And I was offered to work on the philosophy of Professor Ratnakar Pati. You know, Professor Ratnakar Pati was the illustrious professor, teacher of Professor Ghosh Mishra, the first professor and head PG Department of Philosophy at College University. And most of the writings of Professor Ratnakar Pati was in Odia language. I found the writings having illuminating insights into varieties of philosophical problems. My teacher, Professor J.P. Das, helped me, has taken meticulous care to weigh each word and sentence in order to give justice to the philosophical reflection of Professor Ratnakar Pati. So my gratitude goes to my teacher, Professor Ghosh Das, for motivating and inspiring me to write on Orissαν philosophy, particularly on the philosophy of Ratnakar Pati in my MPhil class. On this occasion, I would like to present my paper on Ratnakar Pati's view on Indian culture. According to Professor Ratnakar Pati, every country or nation or society has a culture of its own. It has its own set of values, which is nothing but the reflected action of the ideal of its civilization. A country may undergo changes physically, mentally, politically, socially, or religiously, because change is the stop of the universe. Unchangeability, as Pati writes, is either perfection or death. But the essential spirit of the culture cannot undergo any change. The essential element in the form of eternal values is cultivated from the social, economic, political, religious, and intellectual thoughts of the civilization. Pati asserts that India has established itself in the world for its great cultural heritage. An eternal spirit lies behind it, which never forces the culture to suffer change in its values. Pati calls it Atma, the essence of culture, which is found in the common outlook of lives of the individuals. It is reflected in the terms of community of thought, a similarity of conduct and behavior of the people living in it. In the essay, Bharatiya Sanskritika Dhara, the tradition of Indian culture, Pati maintains that there are certain values in all traditions. In all traditions of the nation, there are certain values which could be characterized as eternal in the sense that they constitute the very basis of society. They can be characterized as fundamental and basic values. But he rightly points out that since ancient time, India has been a practical field of ancient knowledge, Vedic wisdom, science, art, literature, philosophy, sociology, politics, etc., which exhibit Hello?
You are audible. Yes, you are audible.
Which exhibits the uniqueness of Indian culture and its ancient heritage. The outcome of values from these sources reflect the high ideal of its ancient Vedic civilization. With a rich culture of its own, India has been keeping its cultural relationship with other countries of the world for thousands of years. In spite of so many cultural influence, outside contact, attack by external forces, India has not lost the essential characteristics, ideas, and doctrine of its culture, rather has been enriched and modified with synthesis of Western and Eastern culture. Let me reflect on the characteristics of Indian culture as said by Professor Ratnakar Pati. The rich ideal of ancient Vedic civilization has shaped the nature and characteristics of Indian culture. We shall focus some of his basic characteristics of Indian culture that Pati describes as fundamental elements of our culture. The outstanding fact that Indian culture is its tradition of tolerance or a Sahishnutya. Pati names Sahishnutya as the chief characteristic of Indian culture. Though the religion of Buddha vanished from India over 1,000 years ago, its teachings have become closely interwoven with Hinduism. The impact of Islam was perhaps responsible for the emphasis of monotheistic teaching in medieval India. Intensive preaching of Christianity in India through missionaries brought some changes and modifications in the outlook of Indians. The great reformation of Indian culture is due to the impact of other religions. The uniqueness of our culture has been considered as the quality of Sahishnutya or tolerance. Spirituality is said to be most fundamental characteristic of Indian culture. It is India's cultural capital. As said by Vivekananda, every nation has a special genius, and India's spirituality, which embraces all aspects of life and relationship. Pati considers it an Indian ideal. To him, the spread of universal humanism and non-violence by Gandhiji is nothing but outcome of the spirituality of Indian culture. India has paved its way to establish these two noble ideals in the entire world. Pati hopes that these two ideals, based on spirituality, aim at world peace, universal love, and universal brotherhood. Pati also advocates another characteristic of Indian culture, that is Vishwa Bhratutva Bhava, universal brotherhood, which is the outcome of spirituality and is meant for universal welfare. In the article entitled Vishwa Bhratutva Bhava, Pati writes, self-relation is the root of universal brotherhood. It is the unique gift of India to the modern world. It may be accepted as an ideal Indian culture. The basic feature of the culture is found in Gita. I don't want to recite the mantra, and it is a wide tolerance, a feeling that others may be equally right in the methods they follow. That is the essence of Indian culture. It is the sense of tolerance that gives harmony to the inner life of Indian culture. When Indian life is formed on its own faith, it is prepared to approach other faiths with an open mind. The result of this tolerance has been to add to the richness and variety of Indian life and Indian culture. Pati observes that samanvaya, or the sense of synthesis, is another important characteristic of Indian culture. From the beginning of our civilized life, we find the synthesis of Aryan culture with the Dravidian culture, the East and West. Pati says that the synthesis is found in social, religious, and day-to-day life of Indians, irrespective of varieties of language used. Then let me read out the ideal of Indian culture as reflected by Pati. In the essay entitled Bharatiya Sanskritika Dhara, the tradition of Indian culture, Pati says that the culture of a nation or country is based on its ideal. The highest ideal of a civilization is reflected in its culture. It makes the culture enriched, dynamic, and progressive. The ideal is found in different aspects of culture. Ideal acts like a lighthouse for the individual life and collective life of a nation as well. The progress in different aspects of nation is determined according to the ideal. If the ideal of a nation is materialistic, then it is reflected in different aspects of its culture, where sensual pleasure, material power, wealth, enjoyment are taken to be values. If universal humanism is the ideal, then it is reflected in its culture in the form of a universal love, universal brotherhood, and various kinds of welfare activities and organizations. In this light, the culture of a nation is based on its supreme ideal. Pati is conscious of the supreme power which is hidden in every individual. For perfect development of individual self, each man needs perfection in every walk of his life and outlook, through which the unmanifested infinite power would be manifested. And the value of universal brotherhood, as Pati says, that man's duty, that teaches man's duty and responsibility. It is not confined to himself or for this self-interest only. It moves from individual to family, family to community, community to society, society to nation, nation to nation, and nation to great world. He fills the happiness of himself with the happiness of all, with an undivided faith that the people of the entire world belong to one family, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Here, all the people of the world are the children of immortal being, Sarve Amritasya Putraha. Pati depicts it as the noble character of Indian culture, which is meant for world peace through universal love. In Indian culture, the supreme ideal, Param Adarsha, is Satyam, truth, Shivam, beauty, and Sundaram, bliss. It is the highest ideal of human life. It is the ideal of ancient Aryan culture and civilization. The perfection of this ideal depends on the perfection of different aspects of culture. The ideal of Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram is realized in every aspect of Indian culture. It is the ideal of Parama, or the supreme consciousness, the supreme spiritual being, the infinite and the eternal being, Sachidananda, embodiment of Sat, truth, Chit, bliss, and Ananda, beauty. This Parama is present in every being, everything, every power, and every action of the universe. It is the embodiment of perfection. It is manifested and realized through perfection of each aspect in the form of truth, beauty, and bliss. Pati says that Indian life is devoted to realize the ideal in different activities. He realizes the Satya in the form of Vedic wisdom, Shiva through different welfare activities in practical life, and Sundaram through artistic creativity. In this sense, all the aspects of Indian culture, such as Indian philosophy, religion, morality, politics, economics, art, Ayurveda, mathematics, music, literature, etc., are all at the means of realizing the same supreme goal or the ideal Satyam Shivam Sundaram. In Indian, okay. Then we have to come to the facets of Indian culture. I would like to make it short. A relation of supreme ideal in the order to form the greater India is the aim of Indian culture. But the emphatically says that the ideal is realized through the social institutions and all activities in all aspects of Indian life. The chief of these aspects are Indian philosophy and others that I have already reflected upon. It is said that every philosophy bears the mark of its origin, the basis of culture. Philosophy in India is defined as darshan or vision. It arises as a result of a deep spiritual base and a kind of meditation. It can therefore be described as meditative. It teaches the secular and spiritual concepts and practices through its contents like different schools of in a philosophy that is the wisdom of spirituality, morality, universality, secularism, self-relation, yoga, theory of karma, liberation, moksha, right knowledge, brahmagyan, nirvana, noble truth, and others. Then I have to skip to Pati, and Pati has rightly defines the dharma at the has given dharma, artha, kama, moksha at the four purusharthas, noble truth. And to Pati, dharma is useful to mankind in conserving the chief human values like wealth, health, fame, respect, freedom, justice, friendship, purification of self, social service, satyam, shivam, sundaram, which are called steya. It is a biological need of man. It is the supreme human value, param purushartha. Dharma is the best criterion for the conservation of human value. It is said that religion is an endeavor to secure the conservation of socially recognized values. Moksha is another purushartha in the Indian culture. It is regarded as the ultimate value. Moksha is a transcendental at liberation. Professor J.P. Das assures that moksha is perfection. It is unique to Indian culture that human beings must achieve perfection in every activity in order to realize the goal. Pati understands moksha in this sense. He wants to bring perfection of cardinal virtues within the man. Man, in this sense, realizes the supreme ideal Satchit Ananda. Karma and Artha are the other two human values or purusharthas which are meant for material happiness. Without these two, no human being strives towards the progress and perfection. They regulate human activities for realizing the ideal of culture. Let me go to the last part of my paper, though it is not possible to reflect about all the things. Pati said that contemporary Western culture is largely materialistic. It lays emphasis upon material power, money power, and muscle power. All these powers can be called corporeal power. It makes use of gross power inherent in the physical and biological matter. And this culture neglects both the mental power and moral power, or at least moral power. It is hardly conscious that the gross corporeal power is blind. What is conscious of the fact that the scientific material and sensual attitude have made the present people paralyzed by inventing labor-saving devices and taking up the true human values. Western civilization is established on the material power and sensual attitude. Pati says that our Indian culture has now been influenced and dominated by Western-centered culture. It is quite successful in making a lot of technological inventions aimed at increasing the physical comforts of sensory life, but has little success in attaining the perennial and universal non-sensory values of supreme truth, goodness, and beauty. In the article Vishwabhratutva Bhava, Pati says that worship of matter is not the sign of human civilization. Universal brotherhood is impossible where the power of matter, power of a bomb, lathi, gun, sticks, stone, and rifles are given much more importance. And If some try to establish peace and harmony through the scientific power in the industrial civilization, that would be a sordid picture of the universal brotherhood. Pati calls upon to cultivate self-power instead of material power. In spite of our advancement in science and technology, men are not far removed from the brutish nature due to their materialistic way of thinking and living. They are not conscious of their self, Atman. It seems to modern man simpler and easier to remake the face of material environment, but to remake the inward nature, to accept the values of spirit, which makes for creative living, justice, freedom, and equality is a harder task. Self-power is a divine nature. It's the greatest and supreme power in universe. All-round development of life is possible because of the self-power, as Pati says. Indian wisdom is that there cannot be a true sense of life unless one stands on foundation of this self-power. It is the necessary odds of life to keep powers potent in it. Each aspect of the development of one's life depends upon one's self-power and self-confidence.
Dr. Moharana, try to conclude, please.
Okay, thanks. Pati, in fact, makes us aware to cultivate such self-power instead of material power in order to bring peace to human civilization. And in this, Pati had cited one verse, Sarve bhantu sukhinaha, sarveshantu niramaya sarvabhadrani pasantu, ma pasya dukha bhag bhavet. In this verse, Pati said that the ideals of Indian culture, which opens the way for all to realize the Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram in order to establish universal peace on the globe. For realization of this ideal, one has to change his heart, enlarge his outlook, and strengthen his mind. It is the power of spirit, the true human spirit, by which all aims can be fulfilled. The ideal of Satyam, Shivam, and Sundaram would be realized all over the world, and the whole world and the whole of the human race will be united into the single fraternity. Thanks so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Moharana. You have very elaborately given Professor Ratnakar Pati's views on the different facets of Indian culture. And I think all those facets are the idealistic facets of Indian culture that has been referred by different philosophers, Indian philosophers like Professor Radhakrishnan, Professor K.C. Bhattacharya, and others. But as I have gathered from your speech, that I have not read much on Ratnakar Pati's work, but self-power, the emphasis on self-power, that is the gist of the uniqueness of rebringing, I should say, the concept of self-power into our focus. That is the unique contribution of Professor Pati. If you have any other such concept which can be referred as unique to the Professor Ratnakar Pati, please mention the audience. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, sir. Pati has made a very the distinction between corporeal power and the material power, the corporeal power and the spiritual power. And Pati has named it as self-power because for him self-power is the divine in nature and is the greatest and the supreme power in the universe. And Pati has mentioned different kinds of powers in his article, like the atom power. Atom power also he has written in other articles. But he has made it clear that self-power, or that is he has written in own language Atma Bala, self-power. Okay, self-power is also the Atma Bala, which is divine and which is moral, which is also mental. and it is greatest and supreme power in the universe. But supreme power, as he says, it is above the moral power, it is above all, because it's spiritual nature.
So I would now request Professor G.P. Das to enlighten us a bit more on Professor Pati's facet of Indian culture. Then we'll switch over to the other topics.
I have nothing to offer as comments or observations now. Please go on with the other paper.
May I say something here?
Yes, Professor Maji, please.
Yeah, it is very nice that Dr. Moharana has brought up Professor Pati's views on Indian culture, but I don't know whether he has actually addressed the total complete paper. He has not able to produce it, present it, but I don't see anything in that paper that Moharana would like to say. It looks like the paper is a spokesperson for Pati's views.
Yes, sir. I have just reflected.
Hold on.
Mostly, Professor Maji, mostly it is so, and he has tried to place Professor Pati in the framework of Indian culture. He has tried to search for a niche for Professor Pati, who is totally unknown to the Indian.
That is appreciated. That is appreciated. But what I am trying to push Dr. Moharana to work a little bit diligently and make a critical appreciation of Pati's views. That will enrich the paper. That's
what should have been done then? What should have been done then? Moharana is not expected to add his views.
A scholar, that's my view, that scholar should not just support what the speaker is, the author is saying.
The best support that it could be given. He must give the best support that it could be given. If there is any criticism against it, then he is out there to meet. But is there anything against Professor Pati? In the availability, there is not.
So you are assuming that whatever Pati has said is fine and nothing to say more about on that?
No, he is trying to bring out a map in which he relates Pati with other thinkers. That is his contribution. Pati does not stand alone, as you will find it in his books. He connects it to the wider framework.
Oh, okay. So then, if he does that, he should speak it down more explicitly.
Right. This is his contribution, and this any scholar's contribution would be that.
Yeah. But then, if he is trying to put Pati in the national, other scholars, giving a place for him in the national platform, then that should be also very clear in the paper, right?
Certain things are said and certain things are shown. Certain things are said and certain things are shown.
Yeah, whatever is shown must be also explained.
No, everything that cannot be, everything that can be shown cannot be said. You have to see through it.
Anyway, I'll stop here.
No, I think we can put it in this form, that it is bringing the entire gamut of Indian culture for the consumption of Orissan people, and to put it in our own language so that we can understand what actually is there in the Indian culture. So I think that is the spirit with which we can appreciate Professor Pati's view, and the concept that what actually as philosophers we do, we try to find out which concept is important in a particular writing. So here, as I referred, self-power, Dr. Moharana has also referred to this self-power again and again. So maybe that is on that actually we can bring certain other perspectives. So that is how the paper will be enriched. That is what Professor Majhi's point of view. Because when the paper goes for publication, we want it to be enriched in some other with some
But
other
that is another direction.
perspectives.
That is another direction. Maharana's view is not the last view. There are others who will come up and do the other things left by him.
Right.
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, entire thing is not reflected here, and I have also tried to reflect upon, and I have also connected Ratnakar Pati's view with other philosophers. Okay, due to the passage of time, I have not. It is not possible to reflect on all the things that the paper shows and the paper is written. The paper has so many things. But because of the positive time, it not reflect on everything that I have written.
Thank you, Dr. Moharana. And on behalf of the AOPA, we would request you to go for a test because you have mentioned all the symptoms which these days are very much pertinent so far as our healths are concerned. Please do it. Thank you.
So can I have a simple question to
Yes.
Dr. Kailash Chandra?
Yes.
So can you say that what do you mean by self-power? Professor Pati has suggested that how it works. That what do you mean by self-power? How does it works? Like
Pati has made it very clear that the Indian wisdom has its foundation on this self power, and it is the necessary hours of life to keep power potent in it, and everybody has self power within himself because it is divine nature. And Pati had said that for all-round development of life, self-power is necessary. So self-power has a vital role, okay, for developing the personality, for developing the spiritual enlightenment and everything. And Pati has also said that it is latent in every man.
that is okay. That what I meant to say, that is it a spiritual power you are talking about, or a material power you are talking about, economic power you are talking about? What kind of power it is? Is it based on a spiritual model which other schools of Indian philosophy is having, or it is a kind of Charvak model you are talking about, that to have a kind of development within the society? What kind of model it is?
Thank you, madam. Due to paucity of time, these things cannot be discussed in its totality.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. And we can now switch over to the second reader. Thank you, Dr. Moharana, for your presentation. Thank you.
Next speaker, the Miss Jyotirmay Ray from Udayanath Autonomous College of Science and Technology. Her paper is Euthanasia and Analytical Study.
Jyotirmay, are you present? Hello.
Jyotirmay? No, sir. She is not available. Next speaker is Mr. Somanath Moharana from the UN Autonomous College of Science and Technology. His topic is the notion on synthetic a priori knowledge. Somanath?
Namaskar.
Yes, please.
Respected President and all teachers and all participants, I am Somanath Moharana, student of the first year Department of Philosophy, Udayanath Autonomous College, Adaspur. My paper is the notion of synthetic a priori knowledge. Now I am going to present it.
You are not properly audible.
Sir, sir.
ପାଖକୁ ନିଅ ସ୍ପିକରଟା ପାଖ ଫୋନଟା ପାଖରେ ନେଇ କୁହ।
Okay, sir. The concept of synthetic a priori is very much well known in the history of epistemology. Immanuel Kant, the critical philosopher, is of the view that knowledge is judgmental. It is expressed in and through judgments. It consists of elements of two different categories. It is a combination of both synthetic and a priori elements. A proposition is priori judgment, or to say propositions in the tradition of propositions and their meaning are uninformative. They are independent of experience, meaning thereby their truth is established without recourse to experience. On the other hand, knowledge as synthetic is experience dependent. The dichotomy between analytic or a priori and synthetic or a posteriori was a debatable point, both for the rationalist and empiricist. Kant points out that knowledge is both informative and necessary. It is the structure of the world. Philosophy is a critique of other modes of thought. It is a second order activity. It can be studied under four think tanks: metaphysics, epistemology, logic, and axiology. In this paper, my humble attempt is to highlight the concept of a synthetic a priori in the field of epistemology. When we talk about theory of knowledge, origin of knowledge, nature of knowledge, sources of knowledge, and what is the right knowledge, we get various answers from different philosophers. But in modern European philosophy, there is a unique traditional competition between rationalists and empiricists in the theory of knowledge, whereas rationalists claim that reason is the only source of knowledge. Empiricists argued that experience is the only source of true knowledge. Where rationalist maintains knowledge is only a priori, empiricist maintains knowledge is only a posteriori. A cursory glance of the history of modern European philosophy, starting from René Descartes to Immanuel Kant, reveals that there are three trends of thought: rationalism, empiricism, and criticism. John Locke, George Berkeley, and David Hume belong to the empiricist school, and René Descartes, Benedict de Spinoza, Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz belongs to the rationalistic school. Immanuel Kant belonged to the age of criticism. Empiricism holds knowledge is empirical. Rationalism holds that knowledge is rational. Immanuel Kant holds knowledge is both rational and experimental. Empiricists hold that knowledge begins in and ends with experience. No element of knowledge is found a priori. Mind at the time of birth is a clean slate, a tabula rasa. It acquires knowledge about the external and the internal world through two gateways: perception and reflection. All our ideas are either simple or complex. Simple ideas are nothing but the representatives of object external to us. This is the view advocated by John Locke. Berkeley, on the other hand, is of the view that knowledge is a orderly series of family experience. Hume pointed out that knowledge is either analytic or synthetic. Rationalism, on the other hand, holds that knowledge begins in and ends with reason. All ideas are innate, says Leibniz. Spinoza is of the view that knowledge is intuitive. Thus, we find that some are giving emphasis on reason and some are on experience. If the reason is taken as the ground of knowledge, then it lacks information. If experience is taken as the ground, then it lacks necessity and universality. Kant brings a revolution in the world of epistemology, which reflected in his critique of pure reason. He examined the structure of knowledge expressed in judgments and finds that certain elements known a priori are indispensable for the formation of any meaningful discourse. A meaningful judgment must satisfy two conditions: necessity and information. While Immanuel Kant institutes a revolution in epistemology, he points out that both the trends are partial in their viewpoints. Both of them regard that objects to be known, mind must approach them. But Kant points out that the mind is not a mere onlooker in the whole process of knowledge. He points out that object to be known must confirm the forms of intuition and categories of understanding. The mind is not passive, rather active. Mind implies the form and experience supply the matter. In this way, Kant reconciles empiricism and rationalism. He holds that knowledge is a joint product of both the eternal Nitya and non-eternal Anitya elements. Eternal elements are called the form and non-eternal are called matter. For example, a cat is on the mat. Here word like a, is, on are a priori elements. That can apply to any subject matter. Instead of cat and mat, I can use any predicates in their places. It can be said meaningfully, a goat is on the tiger.
Thank you, Dr. Somnath. You please tell us one thing, that whether synthetic a priori judgments are possible according to Kant. And we have understood what you are presenting. But tell us about this.
Sir, synthetic a priori knowledge is possible according to Kant in three ways. Only in mathematics, physics, and geometry. But it is not possible in metaphysical knowledge.
I think you have also mentioned about that, and we will conclude on that point, that synthetic a priori judgments are possible because instead of receiving sense impressions from outside, we actively combine them into significant representations in our mind. So that is how mind, that is how the critique of pure reason, that is the sense of the critique of pure reason, that knowledge begins with sense, goes then to understanding, and ends in reason. Okay, you have presented it very nicely. Thank you. We'll go to the next paper.
Thank you. The next paper is Miss Jyoti Behera from Udayanath Autonomous College of Science and Technology. Her paper is Buddhist Theory of Four Noble Truths. Jyoti Behera.
Jyoti, are you present?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
Good afternoon, respected President, sir, and dignitaries. I am Jyoti Behera, belongs to PG Department of Philosophy and Critical Thinking of Udayanath Autonomous College and Science and Technology, Adaspur. I am going to present a paper on Buddhist theory of Four Noble Truths. Buddhism belongs to Nastika or heterodox system. The founder of Buddhism is Gautama Buddha. Buddha was primarily an ethical teacher and a social reformer, then a theoretical philosopher. Buddhism is one of the four major religions in the world today. Buddhism has a special role to play in the modern world because, unlike many other religious traditions, Wheel of Life overview, the Bhava Chakra, the Wheel of Life or the Wheel of Becoming, is a complex picture representing the Buddhist view of the universe. To Buddhist, existence is a cycle of life, death, rebirth, and suffering that they seek to escape altogether. The Four Noble Truths contain the essence of the Buddhist Buddha's teachings. It was these four principles that the Buddha came to understand during his meditation under the Bodhi tree. These noble truths are suffering or dukkha, cause of suffering or dukkha samudaya, cessation of suffering or dukkha nirodha, the path leading to this cessation of suffering, dukkha nirodhagami marga. The first noble truth about suffering or dukkha. The obvious kind of suffering corresponds to the first three sights Buddha saw on his first journey outside his place: old age, sickness, and death. But according to the Buddha, the problem of suffering goes much deeper. Life is not ideal and it frequently fails to live up to our expectations. Human beings are subject to desire and craving. But even when we are able to satisfy these desires, the satisfaction is only temporary. Even when we are not suffering from outward causes like illness or bereavement, we are unfulfilled and unsatisfied. This is the truth of suffering. Buddha's teaching do not end with suffering. Rather, they go on to tell us what we can do about it and what to end it. The second noble truth about the cause of suffering or dukkha samudaya. Everything has a cause. Nothing comes out nothing. Ex nihilo nihil fit. The existence of every event depends upon its cause and conditions. Everything in this world is conditional, relative, limited. Suffering being a fact, it is have a cause. It must depend on some conditions. This being that arises, the cause being present, the effect arises. Is the causal law of dependent origination or the Pratyuta Samutpada. The third noble truth about the cessation of suffering. There is a cessation of suffering because everything arises depend on some causes and conditions. Therefore, if these causes and conditions are removed, the effect ceases to exist. Everything being conditional and relative is necessarily momentary. Which is born must die. Production implies destruction. The fourth noble truth about a path leading to cessation of suffering or dukkha nirodhagami marga. There is an ethical and spiritual path to remove and cess all suffering. This is a set of principles called the Eightfold Path. The middle way, it avoids both indulgence and severe asceticism, neither of which the Buddha had found help in his search for enlightenment. This Eightfold Path is open all monks as well as laymen. These Eightfold Paths or Ashtanga Margas are right faith or Samyak Drushti, right resolve or Samyak Sankalpa, right speech or Samyak Vak, right action or Samyak Karmanta, right living or Samyak Jiva, right effort or Samyak Vyayam, right thought or Samyak Smriti, right concentration or Samyak Samadhi. Modern developments have nothing to obtain but insecurity and competitiveness, as well as tension and associate with them. Buddhism offers a few very simple and efficacious methods to combat that. Buddhism has a role to play in our life. The Four Noble Truths says you can root out egocentrism by following the Eightfold Path.
Thank you, Jyoti. You have presented it very nicely, Four Noble Truths. Now, one thing just you tell us, and then if others have questions, they will ask you. That whether Buddha propounds an absolutistic philosophy or a relativistic philosophy. It is relativism or absolutism?
Sir, absolutism.
No, it is a relativistic philosophy that Buddha is propounding. Okay, because from the Four Noble Truths which you have mentioned, all these things, that nothing is permanent. That if had it been so, it would have been what Buddha said, that sarvam dukkham, sarvam khanikam, and sarvam anityam. So anityavada, so khanikavada, all these things are important. So that is why it is relativistic. And the Pratityasamutpada that you are referring, it will be given by your fellow student right now. Thank you. I think let us proceed to the next one. Pratityasamutpada, Dr. Patra.
Yes, sir. Next paper is Pratityasamutpada by Miss Sarmista Ray from Udayanath College.
समस्तଙ୍କୁ ମୋର ପ୍ରଣାମ. Honorable all professor and respected chairperson of the chairperson Ranjit Ghosh. Thank you all ORISSA Philosophy Association give me opportunity this presentation. Myself Sarmista Ray. I am student of +3 second year philosophy honors of the Udayanath Autonomous Science and Technology College. And now I want to speak about my presentation. My topic is Pratityasamutpada. Before going to my topic, I want to start about Buddhism. Buddhism is one of the system of a heterodox system. It presents the true picture of life in its four noble truths, that life is full of suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is a cessation of suffering, there is a way leading to cessation of suffering. Buddhism holds that though life is full of suffering, there is a way out of that. Pratityasamutpada is the solution given by Buddha to lead a good life. He is of the view that only knowledge regarding the causal sequence of suffering we can overcome this. The doctrine of Pratityasamutpada or dependent origination is the foundation of all the teaching of the Buddha. Pratityasamutpada consists of two Sanskrit words. One is pratitya, which means after getting, and another is samutpada, which means arising, which literally means a certain effect. A certain effect follows from a certain cause. It means the production of an effect out of a cause or condition. When the cause or condition disappear, the effect disappear. From the relative point of view, Pratityasamutpada is samsara or world, which is the cause of suffering. From the absolute point of view, Pratityasamutpada is nirvana, which is the cessation of suffering. Pratityasamutpada tells us that in the empirical world dominated by the intellect, everything is relative, conditional, dependent, subject to birth, death, therefore impermanent. Pratityasamutpada is a middle part between eternalism and nihilism. Eternalism states that same things are eternal. They have neither beginning nor end. They are uncaused and do not depend on anything else. On the other hand, nihilism presents that nothing remains after the destruction of things. The doctrine of dependent origination maintains a middle way in both these extremes. According to this doctrine, things have existence, but they are not eternal. Buddha regarded this doctrine as bodhi as well as dharma. The law is he who sees the Pratityasamutpada sees the dharma, and he who sees the dharma sees the Pratityasamutpada. Now I am getting to present how Buddha Pratityasamutpada observed and why it is necessary. For when Siddhartha sees the sense of disease, old age, death, then he left his palace to find a solution of the misery of earthly life. Pratityasamutpada is the solution which he finds. Sansara is full of misery. He studied on the cause of misery and they found that there is a chain of a cause leading to ignorance, which is the root cause of all suffering. He also found that there is a 12-linked causal wheel of dependent origination, and this causal wheel is called Bhava Chakra, Janma Marana Chakra, Dharma Chakra. The 12 links are Jara Marana, old age, Jati, birth or rebirth, Bhava, will to born, amar ichha thibaru ame janma hoche, तो आमर इच्छा होची कोन पे जन्म पे अटैचमेंट एंजॉयमेंट हमर आछि जो संसार प्रति जो अटैचमेंट अछि एंजॉयमेंट होची तापर तार से एंजॉयमेंट कोठ आछि तृष्णा हमर से भोक अछि जोडे कि हमें एंजॉय करिया पे आगु इच्छा थिला ए जिंसटा को हमें पाई परिनी तो वेदना सेंस ऑफ ए तृष्णाटा कोठ आसिला सेंस एक्सपीरियंस रु तापर सेंस एक्सपीरियंस को पे आसिला सेंस ऑब्जेक्ट कांटेक्ट रु सेंस ऑब्जेक्ट कांटेक्ट को पे आसिला सेंस ऑर्गन सिक्स सेंस ऑर्गन थिबर हम सेंस अब जम त ऑब्जेक्ट सहित कांटेक्ट हेले ओ एक्सपीरियंस हेला तापर साधारणतः हम सिक्स जो साइकोफिजिकल ऑर्गेनिज्म सिक्स साइकोफिजिकल ऑर्गेनिज्म है तो सिक्स ऑर्गन हमर अछि तापर हेला कॉन्शियसनेस impression of a past experience taपर ignorance out of these 12 links the first two are last two are related to past life the first two are future life the rest to present life this is the cycle of birth and death ignorance is the root cause of this cycle it can be destroyed only when it is its root cause ignorance is destroyed ignorance can be destroyed only by knowledge so knowledge is the sole means of liberation ignorance is bondage, knowledge is liberation.
Thank you, Sarmista. You have presented it very nicely. And what actually is the beginning of this the Dadasa Nidana? The first one is Avidya, okay, and the end one is Jara Marana. This all and these two are connected through different chains. Dvadasa Nidanas. Okay. All right. And you have mentioned Pratityasamutpada, and we have also heard about the Four Noble Truths. Some portion of Buddhism has been covered. Thank you. We go to the next one.
Next one is Mr. Sarat Chandra Mohapatra from Udayanath Autonomous College of Science and Technology. He will present on perception, a critical approach.
Yes, sir. Good evening, everyone. Respected President of the section, Professor Ranjit Ghosh, sir. I am Mr. Sarat Chandra Mohapatra, the student of Class 3 Second Year Philosophy Honours of Udayanath Autonomous College of Science and Technology. I am going to present a paper titled Perception, a Critical Approach. Here, I am going to present what the term perception stands for, particularly in the Nyaya system of Indian philosophy. Here, my objective is to highlight the Nyaya concept of a perception in detail. Nyaya is defined four valid knowledge which is called Propounds. These four valid knowledges are perception, inference, comparison, and verbal testimony. Perception ordinarily stands for the connection between the perceiver and the perceived. It is a kind of arising out of our mind, our sense organs. The object of our senses are external and objects of mind are ideas glanced either from the object or the comparison of ideas or intuition. In this sense, it is presentative and representative. It is both cognition and recognition. Definition says that perception cannot be false. I perceive means what I perceive is true. Naming it what it is may be wrong, but that I perceive to which I name cannot be erroneous. Therefore, cognition without name is nirvikalpa, and cognition with a name is savikalpa, and recognize that which was once cognized, that is pratyabhigya. According to Gautama, perception as a non-erroneous cognition which is produced by the intercourse of the sense organs with the object, which is not associated with a name and which is well defined. This definition of a perception excluded divine and yogic perception, which is not generated by the intercourse of the sense organs with the object. So, according to Vishwanatha, perception as direct or immediate cognition, which is not derived through the interrelation of many other cognition. But this definition is too limited. It is only confined the knowledge received in ordinary ways. According to Nyayikas, perception may be two kinds. One is ordinary or laukika perception, another is extraordinary or alaukika perception. when the sense organs came into contact with the object in a usual way, we have Laukika Pratyaksha. Then, when the different sense organs came with contact the object in an unusual way, that is called extraordinary perception. Then ordinary perception may be two kinds. One is internal perception or manas, another is external perception or bahya. Now we discuss about manas. When the mind came into contact with the psychological states and the process like affection, pain, pleasure, etc., it is called manasa or internal perception. For example, feeling of a headache with the help of mind is an internal perception. Then we discuss about external perception or bahya. When the perception takes place with the help of 5 sense organs, namely visual, auditory, tactual, gustatory, olfactory, these are called external perception. For example, to see the table with the help of eyes is an external perception. Now we discuss about extraordinary perception. Extraordinary perception may be 3 kinds like Samanya Lakshana, Jnana Lakshana and Yogoja. According to Nyaya, Samanya Lakshana perception is also called the perception of universal. That means when we perceive an object, we perceive the universalness of that object. For example, the concept of a manness, universal concept of a manness inheres in all the particular man. Then we discuss Jnana Lakshana. Jnana Lakshana perception is also called the complicated perception through the association. Here the object is not directly presented to the sense organs, but he is received in the past experience. For example, stone looks hard, eyes look cold, etc. Yogoja perception is intuitive and immediate perception of all the objects of the past, present and future. It is the spiritual power. It is generated in the mind through meditation. This type of a perception is only perceived by the Muni Rishi, etc. According to the Naikikas, there are 3 stages of perception, such as Nirvikalpaka or indeterminate, Savikalpaka or determinate, and a Pratyabhigya or recognition. Now we discuss about Nirvikalpaka perception or indeterminate. Nirvikalpaka is perception of a thing without knowing its any characteristics or name. It is indefinite or unclear. It deals with bad sensation or simple apprehension of the object. Nirvikalpa stage is the preparatory stages of Savikalpa. For example, on seeing the table, we say that this is table, but we do not say that it is its color, size, shape, etc. clearly. Then we discuss about Savikalpaka. Savikalpaka stage is the second stage of a perception. In Savikalpaka stage, here we have the knowledge of an object and a clear awareness about that object. So this is defined, determinate, and we know all characteristics of the object. For example, when we see the table, we say its color, shape, size clearly. Then we discuss Pratyabhigya. Pratyabhigya, it is 3rd stages of a perception. In this, it is a recognition of it as that which was cognized before. It is related to past knowledge. For example, this must be the same man who helped me into the trim car yesterday. In conclusion, it can be said that the Nyaya theory of Pramanas is relevant even today. From the opinion of a Nayakas, we can clearly know about the perception, which is a valid source of knowledge. Now my presentation is finished. Thanks.
Thank you, Sarat. You have presented every aspects of Nyaya theory of perception, but just try to compare Nyaya theory with other realistic theories like Mimamsa in Indian philosophy, and also try to bring a contrast with the idealistic theories of perception as found in the Indian philosophy, so that you can enrich yourself on perception in Indian philosophy. But merely saying perception will not do. You have to say perception from the Indian perspective. Okay.
Yes, sir.
From Western perspective also we discuss perception. All right. Thank you. I think there is no question to Sarat on this issue.
Yes, sir.
Just a minute. Dr. Patra.
Sir, next speaker is Miss
Thank you.
Smriti Mahi Basantia from Utkal University. She is a research scholar. She will present on the reflection of John Dewey's educational thought in the present day scenario.
Okay. Is she present?
Pranam, sir. Yes, sir, I'm present.
Yes. Smriti Mai. Okay. Please present yourself.
Sir, due to scarcity of time, I will just mention a few points regarding my paper.
No, there is a time. There is enough time. You can cover your paper.
Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you. The title of my paper is A Reflection of John Dewey's Educational Thought in Present Day Scenario. Education kept on developing through different diversities. It expands its scope and objectives since the beginning of mankind. The irrelevance and deficiency of today's educational system have brought people to the time where there is disappointment among youngsters. The young individuals nowadays taught only to theorize different concepts, theories and ideas that just gave only fragmented perspective of each and every aspect of life, which only convey greater amount of confusion and disillusion in the mind of individuals. In this present article, an attempt is made to consider the notion of educational approach of John Dewey's and its urgent need in present day perspective. John Dewey is basically most influential American philosopher as well as educationalist who have a unique direction to the field of education with his firm democratic belief in civil societies and education. He rejects the authoritarian structure that school follows in the provisional teaching learning method. Today, nearly all the educational system depend on the knowledge of books, and certainly it left nothing for the students to overcome individual problems for future. Students nowadays do not have any type of mechanism that is applicable to have a transition from educational institution to that of problems one faces in workplace and or also to interact among people. Today, there is very little or no scope for the practical education. It is evident that different educational academic focuses on exams and choose the method of mugging up, which never allows students to utilize their rational thinking power of their own. But according to Dewey, the center of whole academic curriculum was the child, and the development of child is most important, who is regarded as a valuable member of the civilization. Dewey's educational theories are presented in various essays in Pedagogical Creed, The School and Society, The Child and the Curriculum, Democracy and Education, and also Experience and Education. He recurrently claims that education and learning are social as well as interactive process, and thus the school itself is a social institution through which social reform can and should take place. In addition to it, he believed that students thrive in an environment where they are allowed to experience and interact with the curriculum, and all students will have an opportunity to take part in their own learning. He was mostly concerned with the development of a child. A child by nature is a curious, social, as well as have a constructive viewpoint in his mind. A child also possesses raw material inherently to develop being. Dewey considered his school a community where students become an active member for moral as well as social development. Education is a very crucial ingredient for an individual. Instead of using the traditional education system, Dewey focusing on a progressive education system. That means progressive education system comprises socially engaging learning experiences that are developmentally suited for all children. Dewey believed that an effective education came mainly through social collaborations, and it is a link. So formation of school settings should be a primary concept, and then it should deliberated through social interaction. It is we can say that it is a link between the academic achievement as well as the social and the learning experiences that one learns. In contrast to traditional education system or traditional classrooms, Dewey thought that school and classrooms should be representative of real life situation that allows children to participate in learning process, which activates its development through an interchangeable as well as flexible method in variety of social settings. Today, the world where an individual lives is none less than an electronic world. As social lives, as driven by the technologies, it is mostly used for an effective way to promote student engagement, resulting in a passion for lifelong learning. Teachers have a responsibility to provide a new level of instruction that is relevant, effective, and socially engaging for students. We can say in the present situation also, with the closure of all the institution, physical institution and physical classroom, the tools such as texting, instant messaging, chat rooms, wings, Google Meet, Zoom platform, and many more, through which teachers can instruct and guide the student, and it could be an effective measures for spreading information and academic content that now also we are doing it. The main focus within this classroom involves social learning for every individual who participated in it. Do you believe that traditional education in its rigid requirements of standard of conduct encourage learner to be docile or obedient? Producing an environment where learners are encouraged to listen and learn, but not necessarily think for them. His solution was basically experimental education, an education that is based on the idea that learning occurs through experience and requires different activities that directly relate to the learner's life. In experimental education, learners occurs through actually doing something, then reflecting on that particular part and also learning from the process. Every experience influences in some degree of objective conditions under which further experiences are had. For example, if a child who learns to speak has a new facility or have certain kind of desire, but he has also widened the external condition of the subsequent learning. When he learns to read, he simply opens up a new environment. If a person decides to become a lawyer, teacher, physician, or anything, when he executes his intention, thereby necessarily determines some kind of extent or some extend his environment in which he will act in future. In experience, there are basically two things which are essential, that is continuity and interaction. Continuity refers to how experiences, both past and present, influence the future, while interaction refers to how one's current situation influences their experiences. Do we combine these two principles stated that one's present experience are direct result of how their previous experiences interact with and influence the present situation. Simply, you stated that human experiences, that is both past, present, as well as the future, influence the capacity to learn. He said that education is a social process. Education is a growth. And education is not preparation for life, but education is life itself. Education is therefore a process of living. So with the help of these educational notions, people could make the world a better place to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Smriti. You have very nicely presented the view of John Dewey. You please tell us what theory that Dewey presents before us, and this is one thing, and the other thing you explain how technology during the modern times has helped in enhancing the instrumentalistic version of Dewey in the educational system. I think you have worked on this. You please give us the details.
Basically, do you focus on experimental education, that one not only to theorize certain things, but he has to work on that. First of all, we have to know the theory, then we have to act accordingly, and then we have to look at the cases or the things that we are acting upon, that we will reflect on that things that we have performed. And basically he focuses on the social efficiency and the education through experiences, through morning sessions and through project works and through field studies. He have given certain kind of list of the educational list that one should the classroom or the school curriculum should provide, so that the students, the learners could be helpful for the future benefit. Because the things that we learn in the classroom are somehow, we cannot say that all the things are irrelevant, but somehow the things that we learn are basically theorized and we cannot practice it. So he suggested that the curriculum should be in such a manner that the things that is suitable for the real life situation should be taught in the classroom, so that they will not be overcrowded or through their own mental stress. And the
Okay. We could get you that you want to suggest that education that works. That means because Dewey belongs to the pragmatist family, so education that works was his aim, and that also we find in the modern system of education through the technology that enhances our educational capabilities. Thank you. If any other questions?
COVID-19 is also a very good example that we
Professor
are
Maji.
But I'm just asking Smriti Moy, Dewey's philosophy of education, you have explained it, and that's fine. But have you seen anyone being a critic of Dewey's philosophy of education in later period? If they have, then you also incorporate those criticisms in your paper, and then see how far Dewey's philosophy of education stands there. If any modification is required, do it. Or you could say, if you think that their criticism is not stand, then you also substantiate it. Then it will be a enriched paper. Simply explaining a philosopher's view is not a research paper, in my opinion.
No, sir. Actually, I have also mentioned that the Dewey's educational thought also have certain kind of challenges that also he have faced. We can say that in an article of John Dewey in 21st century, the author Morgan K. Williams have stated that it is not something that is practically utilized in a pedagogical sense. So he have criticized John Dewey very frequently. But sir, in my point of view, I have stated that how John Dewey's educational thought is relevant in this period, this 21st century, because the things that within this period also, the things that we are learning from our school or colleges are basically in like bookish language, and we are not utilizing in our day-to-day life. So my point of view was, though he has been criticized by various philosophers later period, but I think we should have we can say that the NEP 2020 have also emphasis on John Dewey's interchangeable course. The subject interchangeable course has been propounded by John Dewey, and it is accepted by government of India also. So I think it is quite possible that we can look after some kind of certain kind of modification to it, so that it is very relevant to this period.
Thank you, Smriti Rai. Now it is time to conclude, to wind up the long session. So we had about from 20 papers. We have discussed around 17 or 18 papers, starting with the facets of Indian culture and the theories of punishment, the surrogacy, and this cloning. All these topics we have covered in this session, and I think this is a very fruitful session, because people our students and teachers, they have entered into different domains of philosophical speculation. But one thing what Professor Majhi is saying, I also reiterate the same view, that whenever a research scholar is trying to put forth his own version, he should try to see the thing from the counter perspective. That is what Professor Dayakrishna's version, that counters perspective. He tried always to see the philosophical speculations from a counter perspective. If we can do that, because you see, philosophy is nothing but apart from philosophy being a dialectical one, dialectical knowledge, it is also a perspectivistic knowledge. That means there are many perspectives. So this is more prominent when we are discussing this ethics and social philosophy. And in these two branches of philosophy, in social philosophy, we find more and more of counter perspectives. And if those counter perspectives are properly tackled, then only we can see, we can say that the paper writer has written, and he has something to say, and he can conclude by putting his own views on it. Thank you. So I think I declare the, of course, it is not my prerogative.
Sir, please unmute, sir. Unmute, sir.
You can mute it.
Professor Das, you please conclude the session. It is from my side, it is concluded. We have covered a great many things.
Thank you very much for the, again, that word marathon.
Marathon session, okay.
Marathon exercise for taking up this section as a surrogate sectional president, if I may say so. but conducted
yes,
the business.
That is the meaning. Substitute. Surrogate means substitute.
Substitute.
Yes, I am. I am a substitute president of the session.
It is nothing like having a womb. It is a substitute affair. So thank you very much for conducting the session very well. And especially I thank you for the concluding remarks. Those are very enlightening, really. While examining the perspectives of a particular thinker, one must take into account all the counter perspectives so that it could become a good research material. So thank you again. And I also thank all the presenters of papers who came up during your tenure. Thank you again, everybody. We shall now begin the valedictory session. And for this, I hand over the microphone to Professor Saroj Kumar Mahanti, who has already come.